looks like they're adapted from something like, I mean, they literally comic book characters. So, I mean, anime is usually adapted from manga, and Hellboy was a comic, so obviously some parallel here. Didn't they fight Nazis too? They did fight Nazis too. And this is another instance, by the way, of the secret occult organization within the Nazis that's worse than the Nazis. But I think in this case, they actually kind of nail it because they're proper occultists, not whatever the fuck Hydra is, you know? The occultists in Hellboy are like, literally commune with Satan to like, yeah, they were fucking lunatics. Like, what was that assassin whose blood was sand? That was, this isn't spoilers, I think this guy's like a known plot element. This dude was sick as shit. He's like a Karl Krunen. Well, he's a Nazi, of course, but this guy's like some ancient assassin that's so old that all of his blood turned to sand. So when he gets stabbed, sand just pours out of him. That's cool. I mean, he's evil, but if you're putting it all together, yeah, very, very, very boomer. That is how blood works. Just roll with it. Just roll with it. It's not like any adaptation of Cowboy Bebop is going to have a phenomenally consistent understanding of how science, biology, anything works. Throw a bucket of water on him to defeat him. I wonder if they tried that. I don't have the best memory of the film. It's been a while since I watched it. Anyway, Guillermo del Toro will do the adaptation for Cowboy Bebop, and then Gorilla Gun. Why not?
Dr. Ahmed Al-Hadid is the ICU medical director at Jupiter's Medical Center in Florida, and he went on CNN to discuss his experience working in the ICU with COVID-19 patients, and he tears up describing this experience of nonstop pain, suffering, and death that he sees every single day, which is difficult to grapple with considering all of these deaths that he's witnessing. It's all preventable. These people would likely not be in the ICU had they gotten the COVID-19 vaccine. So take a look at his experience, and then I want to talk about what he says when we come back.
My next guest says he is tired, exhausted, and he's working double shifts to keep up. Dr. Ahmed Al-Hadid, the ICU medical director at the Jupiter, Florida Medical Center, joins me now. Doctor, thank you for your time. You are frustrated. Why?
Thank you, Pat, for having me. We're frustrated because we're tired of seeing people die and suffer because they did not take a vaccine. The vaccine has been available since December 14th, and it's readily available. Over 350 million doses have been given in the United States, and we're tired of telling the families that their loved one's not going to make it. We're tired of telling the patients, you know, what do you have to say to your daughter or your son? I recently had a patient that's 37 years old, has 2 kids, and she was not vaccinated, and she had to FaceTime her kids for the last time before she had, you know, a tragic end.
I mean, what you just described could have been me if I wasn't vaccinated. I mean, that is the scary thing, and I think that is the important point, is that at this point in the pandemic, if you are not vaccinated, you could be that person you just described. How much more difficult is it right now to fight the coronavirus compared to this time last year?
Well, this variant is eating away at the lungs. It's causing collapse of the lung. It's causing air to escape and surround the heart and compress the heart. And we're seeing the patients die faster with this variant. The patients are requiring, you know, everything we have, but we have no medicines to help us with this. The only thing that we see that is preventing death is a vaccine. You know, we're tired of seeing these people die just because they're not vaccinated. It's very frustrating. The nurses are overwhelmed. The nurses are crying. My practitioners are crying. And even I, you know, when talking to somebody and telling them this is it, you have anything to say to your loved ones for the last time. You're not going to say anything else. We're going to put you in a chemically induced coma, and you're going to be dead in a few days. It's very hard to say that over and over and over again.
That's got to take such a tremendous emotional toll on you. What is that like, having to go through that day in, day out?
It is very difficult. You know, if it wasn't for my wife and my kids to go home to, but it's even harder when it's your friends. I have a patient now that's the father of one of my son's classmates, and he's not expected to make it. He was not vaccinated. And I also have an ICU nurse that was just delivered a baby and didn't take the vaccine because she didn't know if it was safe or not. And it's not her fault. It's not anyone's fault. We just urge, people to take the vaccine because we don't want to lose anybody else.
That was really tough to watch. Seeing him tear up made me tear up. It's just, I can't imagine what it's like to see this every single day. I mean, I've talked about compassion fatigue on this program that nurses are experiencing working with COVID-19 patients who they beg to get vaccinated, they don't, and then, it's the same story. But not everyone develops this, thick skin. A lot of people are traumatized working with this COVID-19 patients. He explained how, nurses are overwhelmed, they're crying, general practitioners are crying, ICU doctors are crying. It's so much death that you are seeing every single day, and it's more emotional, it's more difficult to deal with, knowing that every single death here could have been prevented.
Here goes the shit out, come.
Wednesday, September 1st, 2021. My name is Sam Cedar. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Tim Higgins, a reporter at the Wall Street Journal and CNBC contributor, to discuss his recent book, Power Play, Tesla, Elon Musk, and the bet of the century. Also on the program, the Supreme Court sits back and lets Roe v. Wade fade away in Texas. Meanwhile, Texas also passes one of the most restrictive voting laws in the nation. And the austerity ghouls take the occasion of the annual Social Security Trustee Report to claim the sky is falling just in time to meet the negotiations on the $3.5 trillion budget resolution. Meanwhile, with the unemployment benefit cliffs days away, up to 11 million people losing benefits. New reports show that curbing benefits by Republican states may have actually hurt job growth.
Meanwhile, Republican leader in the House, Kevin McCarthy, threatens businesses that cooperate with the congressional January 6th investigations. And the lawyer for 17 January 6th rioters has apparently ghosted him. Just got away. So too has an Oklahoma congressman who tried to sneak into Afghanistan.
They have chip back
Very well, possibly. And a new report: air pollution is slashing years of out of the lives of billions around the globe. All this, and the heartwarming story of a black Texas principal, elementary school principal, who's been fired for supposedly being accused of teaching critical race theory. All this and more today on the program. Emma Vigeland, hello, how are you?
Mixing it up today, huh?
What do you mean by
I don't know, just kind of getting loosey-goosey with the format of the intro.
yeah,
Right.
sometimes I'll do that.
That kind of day.
It is that kind of day.
It's hump day, right?
That's correct. Yes, no, Wednesday. That's correct.
No, I mean, I just
Appreciate the heads up.
want to make sure that you understood the term.
Yeah, no, I did. I picked up on that. I understand the kids are saying that a lot these days, and I've totally picked up on it too. Oh yeah, that's what I got. Yeah, I've been hanging out with a lot of teens. My daughter's having friends over for the last couple of days of summer, and so I'm getting all the lingo. And I heard them say yesterday, tomorrow's hump day.
Right.
So
Well, I mean, we all celebrate hump day in different ways.
Yep.
Sam does it, but it's completely torpedoed away the format of the show. But
There you go.
regardless.
Got a lot of stuff to get to. Later in the program, we'll be talking to Tim Higgins about Elon Musk and whether what's actually happening with electric cars as we have gone through a series of massive storms, wildfires, and then some function or another are a function of the intensity, at least, and the frequency, a function of climate change. But before we do, there's an interesting dynamic that's taking place now. In many respects, and it really is the first I'm starting to see of this. And it's like 5 or 6 years, maybe more, since we saw this, where both the corporate media's inclination to promote war at the expense of, well, in addition to, at the expense of a lot of things, but in addition to is taking an opportunity to sort of like intimidate Democrats. We're also seeing the same thing in terms of austerity. And I did a pre-record with Senator Russ Feingold yesterday that we're going to play in about a week to talk about what took place in this country in the wake of 9/11. He was the only person to vote against the USA Patriot Act. But he talks about what it was like being in the Senate when a lot of people knew that we shouldn't go to war. We did. And how cowed Democrats were by things like the specter. And people have to remember, this 20 years ago, the specter of Vietnam cowed Democrats in a way that I think it might be, well, a little bit hard to appreciate. I mean, it depends on how your perspective. But
It didn't cow them in a way that caused them to reevaluate escalation.
I'm saying they voted. The Senate was controlled by Democrats in 2001, and they voted for that war, despite the fact that behind closed doors, the majority of them were saying we should not be doing this, and then they walked onto the floor and voted for it. And the interesting thing that Feingold said in comparing Obama to Biden was that Obama immediately got rolled, or was, maybe that's even too generous on some level, simply took for granted that the generals and the blob, as it were, the groupthink involved in U.S. foreign policy, took them at face value, assumed that they knew what was best, and was intimidated by them. And Feingold said, to his credit, Joe Biden was not. He got us out of Afghanistan, and he did it. He did it when he said he was going to do it, and there was plenty of opportunity for him to extend a couple of days, but he basically made a decision that we need to get out, and he didn't care about the political hits that he took. Here he is yesterday defending that decision.
I was not going to extend this forever war. And I was not extending a forever exit. The decision to end the military operations at Kabul airport was based on the unanimous recommendation of my civilian and military advisors, the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and all the service chiefs, and the commanders in the field.
And some credit where credit's due. Joe Biden got us out of there, and he did so despite the fact that you see, obviously, let's put aside the right wing for a moment, because they're both going to say we can't let the dirty Afghans into this country because it's going to change the nature of our country if we allow 100,000 or 200,000 refugees into this country, or 10 for that matter. And simultaneously, how can we leave them to the Taliban? But you have to also look at the supposed center, maybe even the center left, or really the media that is promoting this, despite the fact that the American public wants to get out, and there's no really legitimate reason for us to stay there. And just case in point, Richard Engel, who is a beloved NBC war correspondent, look at this first tweet. Put up the first tweet for me, Bradley. This tweet, this was assembled, I think, by G here on, this is him in February of 2020. U.S. and Taliban agreed for American troops to lead in exchange for Afghanistan to never again be a safe haven for Al-Qaeda international terrorists. Why wasn't this deal reached, say, 18 years ago before sacrificing so many lives and so much money? I've asked, can't find a good answer. Now, that is, and keep it up there. I mean, because this is a good question to have asked a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And it's a good question to have asked today, and it's a good question to have asked 5 years ago. And the fact that he can't find a good answer, let's be clear, there's some editorial content in there. And it's an editorial content that I appreciate. Because there is no good answer. I mean, he certainly could find somebody who could give an answer, which is, well, we needed to stabilize the situation, blah, blah, blah. But when he says, why wasn't this deal reached 18 years ago, he's also addressing anybody who would say, well, we have achieved so much in Afghanistan that without those 18 years, we wouldn't have been able to achieve it. And so it's only right to do this now. He knows there's no good answer for that. But, there's no doubt in my mind, Joe Biden thought that the Afghanistan government would last another 3 weeks, essentially, so that we could pull out, and then it would fall. They just miscalculated how quickly it would fall. You got a house of cards, hard to predict which card it's going to be that drops it. But here is the same Richard Engel. I believe it's the same one, right? There's not two. And this is him just this week. Put up the next. This is him August 31st. This is him yesterday. Biden saying Afghanistan was yesterday's news, yesterday's terror threat. That he's guided by future threats. How can the Taliban, who still deny bin Laden was responsible for 9/11, controlling the country in the center of Asia, not constitute a current and future threat? I mean, what happened a year and a half ago? Could he not find a good answer for that?
I guess not. Yeah, I mean, and
Transforma todo o dinheiro foi grátis de tira foto, faz upload e pensa em comissões e fica com tudo grátis. Faz download, é grátis 20.
now that the finality, the final decision has been reached, oh, we're going to call this a threat. We're going to call this a threat. And meanwhile, the Taliban actually worked with the United States to help get Americans out of the country. There's a quote from an aide who spoke to the Washington Post, I believe. The Taliban were absolutely instrumental, says this congressional aide, who helped in protecting U.S. citizens who were trying to evacuate from getting bombed with suicide bombers there, which goes to show that there are not just good and evil actors in this world, and there are not threats, and there are not to the extent that the national security apparatus wants to portray it, right? There are people who you cut deals with and people who act in their own interests. And, it was in the Taliban's interest for us to leave. It was also in our interest for us to leave. It was the right thing to do. And so we worked with them to get this done. And now,
And I have no doubt that we offered them money, or we have offered them future aid, or whatever it is,
Right.
or we have said we will hold off on bombing you, or we will bomb the ISIS-K, I guess it's called, which is a rival to the Taliban. And
much smaller.
yes, but nevertheless, this is you saw their ability to disrupt things there, and there's no doubt that we have made this deal with them, which I'm sure is no more or less odious or than any deal that we've made with Saudi Arabia, who has in many respects a similarly repressive.
Or the deal we made with them before when they were the Mujahideen. Perhaps that, right? I mean, oh God, it's so morally repugnant that we'd be making a deal with the same people who we gave arms to and made deals before. But that was in order to push forward U.S. military supremacy because it was an effort to combat the Soviet Union. So yay for that. This, when we are withdrawing from Afghanistan and maybe not expanding our empire to the way that a war reporter who maybe is a little invested in wars continuing, to his liking, okay, then that's categorically different. I don't know his position on Reagan's policies in Afghanistan during his time, but I'm making an assumption.
Well, and to address, angles of the question, I think do they represent a threat? Well, it's quite clear that we have some leverage with them. It may be in the form of our Air Force. It may be in the form of our duffel bags of money, but we clearly have some measure of leverage with them. And I would also say that there's the concept of beat sweeteners that we see with domestic reporters going in and having lines of questions or inquiries that are maybe favorable or appreciated by some of their sources is not atypical. And I would imagine if you are someone covering the Pentagon or foreign wars by the United States, that you have some sources who are genuinely invested in.
Only those sources. That's also the issue, right? There's not a ton of regular Afghan people on the ground who are the sources that dominate these things.
Well, they may be, but they're not consistent.
They're meant to buttress a specific story that is fed to them by those sources, who are also cherry picking their intelligence that they leak to these reporters when they could have a trove of other intelligence that contradicts it in order to feed one narrative. So if you wonder why the media is always on this drumbeat, one is because some of them got into this industry because they love the American empire so dearly and don't want to think critically about it. And two, it's because everyone they speak to, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, is saying the same stuff, which is cherry picked for the same agenda.
Let's also now move to what's taking place in Texas. We've been talking about this. We brought up this law, SB 8, I believe it is, in Texas when it passed months ago. And SB 8 says that the law was passed. This is a little bit complicated because this was done with a specific intent to protect it from federal court intervention. The law was passed that said it is illegal to abet an abortion. And so that means that if you are an abortion provider, you're abetting abortion. If you are a taxi cab driver or an Uber driver driving somebody to get an abortion, you're abetting an abortion. If you have, if you're an NGO that provides, subsidies or help or advice,
If you're a family member,
if you're a family member, I mean,
to her appointment.
but the law also prevents Texas state government officials from enforcing the law. Instead, it empowers anybody, not just Texas citizens, but anybody, to go in and sue somebody for abetting someone's abortion with the financial incentive of winning $10,000 worth of damages against them and attorney fees. Anybody can do this.
You have standing. You have standing. You have standing.
Heritage Foundation has standing. It doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah.
And the reason why they did this is because when you are suing, suing or looking for redress on a law that is passed in a state that is unconstitutional, because the Supreme Court has deemed that it is unconstitutional to ban abortion, before 22 to 24 weeks of fetal viability. It is a unconstitutional abridgment of a woman's right to an abortion. What will happen is, generally, they will sue, plaintiffs will sue, someone who wants an abortion will sue a state official to make that question rise into or enter into federal courts and be addressed. In fact, there is a Supreme Court case that they're going to hear this year. I think it's coming from Mississippi.
Yeah, it's a
That's a 15 weeks.
15 weeks, right?
15-week ban, or after 15 weeks, abortion is banned, and it's a test of Roe v. Wade. But this Texas case came up. A district court in Texas, federal district court judge enjoined this law from taking effect as of September 1. But the Fifth Circuit, which is a very conservative federal circuit, not only vacated the district court's enjoyment of this law, but then canceled the hearing altogether that he had scheduled to actually review the case.
That was Friday.
It goes to the Supreme Court, or I should say petitioners, people who are trying to protect a woman's right to choose in Texas, go to the Supreme Court and say, we need an emergency injunction here. And the Supreme Court, unlike they did when it was the Remain in Mexico policy question, unlike when they did when it was time to overturn the eviction moratorium, they decided, we're going to let this one go. And so today, in Texas, there is no more Roe v. Wade protection for women. It is over. This is a binary question in Texas as of today. Roe v. Wade protections are that a woman has a right to an abortion up to 22 to 24 weeks from conception. And in Texas, that is no longer operative. It is the Supreme Court, I think, has this on their docket, maybe in the near future.
Maybe they address it in the context of the Mississippi case.
We shall see what happens. But people should understand this is, and this was completely predictable. It was predictable the moment that Ginsburg died. Frankly, it was predictable the moment, in many respects, the moment that Donald Trump won the election. It was predictable before he won the election. I mean, I don't want to pat myself on the shoulder here, because if not, it wasn't terrible. You didn't need to be a soothsayer to see this. But we predicted it in this when I sat in the seat 6 years ago.
People can look that up. Jimmy Northby. But the like repercussions of this, I just think can't be understood, can't be overstated. Because this 6-week threshold, say you're 16 and you don't necessarily have familiarity with your period yet, right? Periods don't come on the dot for some of the men watching every 4 weeks. Sometimes it varies from woman to woman. It doesn't necessarily need to be that. Say your period is infrequent in that way, you might not know you're pregnant for 6 weeks. At the very least, even with somebody who is more in tune with these kinds of things, you may not know that you're pregnant. Like at minimum, I would say 5 weeks is when you start to get concerned, a week after your missed period. So that means that there are going to be countless young women and girls who may be sexually active, who may have been assaulted. There's no exception for incest or rape in this provision, in this law, who are just not going to be able to get abortions, and that's the design of it. A 6-week threshold is virtually impossible to notice and schedule for a woman's health. It's just not. It's not possible.
It's worse than that, because what happens is, if you have a case that is won by someone who brings this abetting case, the abortion provider shut down.
Oh yeah.
And there's only so many abortion providers in Texas. And so it's not going to be long before even the 6-week threshold is irrelevant, because there are no abortion providers in Texas.
They're already they're being quoted in the New Republic. These abortion providers are saying that this woman said 80% of the people calling in are asking if abortion's even legal in the state anymore, and that they're seeing this kind of chilling effect happen already.
Right, but the abortion clinics themselves, they're all going to be shut down. It's just going to be a matter of months. They're all going to be shut down. You will not be able to get an abortion in Texas.
Luckily, it's a small state. You can just go to the nearest state, right? I mean, like, this has massive ramifications, as we already just did. Yeah, but
there it is. I mean, and no one is more cynical. Well, I'm sure there are people, we've had them on, who are more cynical about the functioning of the Supreme Court. It is an unelected body that has the ability, as we can see, to essentially create laws, change the laws, dictate massive changes to our society, or that implicate our daily lives. And when right-wingers complain that 9 people said it was okay to have abortions, in many respects, they're correct. This is a feature of American politics. It would be great if it wasn't, in my estimation, or at least that it was curbed, and there are means in which we could theoretically do that. But the other reality is, it is real. And so when you contemplate, at least to the extent that you engage in electoral politics, this is one of the major implications, and it does not stop with abortion, as we just saw with the eviction moratorium, as we saw with the Remain in Mexico. and countless other cases that we're not even aware of that are
As we
frankly
could
a
see
little
with
bit more
Medicare for
nuanced.
All. If we want to pass Medicare for All, you'd think that there's not going to be a well-funded legal challenge by the Heritage Foundation, by Big Pharma, by these insurance companies to challenge Medicare for All. If you don't think that, you don't understand what's the power of right-wing money and what it's going to do to combat a single-payer healthcare system.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking to Tim Higgins, changing gears a little bit, and talk about his book, Power Play, Tesla, Elon Musk, and the bet of the century, following which I'm going to talk a little bit about this push for austerity when they're bringing up the Social Security. We'll be right back after this. Got a couple of sponsors today for the program. I was a big cereal eater. Well, I was. Then I was like, I can't really eat this garbage. Then I found like stuff like without sugar, and it tasted like cardboard, and it wasn't tasty, and so I gave up cereal. But it's comfort food. I always give my kids cereal, and then I would feel bad because I'm feeding them garbage. Then I don't know when it was, 2 years ago. Magic Spoon wanted to advertise this program. I was like, I'll try it. And bingo, I'm a huge cereal eater now, and so are my kids, and I don't feel bad about it. Why? Because Magic Spoon has amazing flavors, and it also has 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and only 4 net grams of carbs in each serving. Only 140 calories a serving. It's keto friendly, it's gluten free, it's grain free, it's soy free, it's low carb, and it's delicious. You can build your own box. They ship it to you. Build your own box, multiple flavors. Choose 4 of the available flavors for a custom bundle. Choices are cocoa, fruity, frosted, peanut butter, blueberry, cinnamon, and now cookies and cream and maple waffle. That's right. Magic Spoon just brought back 2 of these popular flavors, cookies and cream, maple waffle, and they are perfect. And that sound you hear is my son, my 8-year-old son, screaming at the top of lungs how excited he is because cookies and cream is back. I myself am a cinnamon and a peanut butter guy. Also a little chocolate cocoa in there. But the cinnamon is a staple of my breakfast. You can go to magicspoon.com/majority report and grab a custom bundle of cereal and try it today. Be sure to use our promo code majority report at checkout to save $5 off your order. Magic Spoon is so confident in their product, it is backed with a 100% happiness guarantee. So if you don't like it for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember, it's magicspoon.com/majority report. Use the code majority report to save $5. Thanks to Magic Spoon for sponsoring this program today, and of course, my breakfast on a daily basis, although I've run out. I get thrown off by vacation.
Get on that.
They should do that one of those monthly things. Also, one of the things I did when I returned from vacation, as you recall, although it's getting a little shaggy, is I shave for the week, essentially, when I work in. Sometimes I'll do it twice a week. And for me, I don't have to choose between a great shave and a fair price. Why? Because I use Harry's. Harry's has been a sponsor of this program for a couple of years at least. And now you can redeem a Harry's trial step when you go to harrys.com/majority. You know the deal. Harry's delivers a close shave, and it does so at a very fair price, still as low as $2 per blade. The blades are designed to stay sharp. Apparently they did a little study. Guys who shave 4 times a week say their 8th shave was as smooth as their first. And for people like me who shave 4 times a month, I can go 2 months with a razor. I really have to shave more than that, but not much. Harry's blades are crafted at their very own German factory. The Harry's design team, they combined a weighted ergonomic handle with their signature blade cartridge. They also have a 100% money-back guarantee on harrys.com. For me, the blade head and the handle are tops. years now. No more having to go to the pharmacy and get into like that huge ice glass and they box those Buffy razors. Anyways, Harry's is giving the best offer to the Majority Report listeners. New Harry's customers can redeem a starter set. You get a 5-blade razor, a weighted handle, foaming shave gel with aloe, travel cover to protect your blades when you're on the go. That's a $13 value for just $3. There's truly never been a better time to try Harry's. Check it out. Go to harrys.com/majority. Try Harry's today. All right. I want to welcome to the program Tim Higgins, reporter at the Wall Street Journal and CNBC contributor, to discuss his recent book, Power Play, Tesla, Elon Musk, and the bet of the century. Tim, welcome to the program. I'm here with Emma Bigley.
Hey, thanks for having me out. It's an honor.
So, all right, Tim, let's start with this. Like, your book really focuses on Tesla, but obviously Elon Musk is a huge part of this. Let's just start off with this sort of basic overview. Like, how much of what Tesla has done in terms of its technology, right? In terms of like, and we can maybe talk about the sort of broader benefit that Tesla as an entity has done. But how much of that is a function, at least from the technical standpoint, a function of Elon Musk?
Tesla's benefit really from Elon Musk's vision, his ability to sell the vision of an electric car. The early development, that early technological breakthrough that they had, came from a man named J.B. Straubel, the team he led. They developed the battery pack technology that keeps those cells. There's thousands of these fat finger-like cells in the car that make it work. That battery technology keeps the car from becoming essentially a bomb on wheels. And that was the big breakthrough. And what Elon did was he was able to fund the company. He was able to see the vision. He was able to project that vision to others. And that was really his big contribution.
I mean, so, okay. I mean, I guess, again, like, and that obviously, it's important. It wouldn't exist without that on some level. But the genius is less in the technological know-how, more in the sales ability.
And, well, that's true. The other thing was he has the innate ability to understand what luxury car customers want. He was a car guy himself, and as CEO, he enabled his team to do the Model S, which was really the big breakthrough car, and that was seen as the best car that just happened to be an electric vehicle, and he was able to bring that to the market. So it was the combination of taking that battery technology and bringing it into the road, but also packaging it in a way that the customer didn't feel like they were compromising. And that was really where the traditional automakers had struggled for years when they talked about zero-emission vehicles. There was always so many compromises, and Elon just did not believe in that. He held the team to a level where this was going to be the best car, and oh, by the way, it's electric.
All right, so let's go back to 2003 when the company started. Like, where was the battery technology, and talk about specifically what they had to do to keep it, because this is, I mean, and maybe before you get to that, actually, I mean, let's talk about the change that has taken place in the context of what Tesla has managed to do in terms of at least forwarding the concept of electric vehicles. Because I mean, I remember back in the late 90s, I think it was, there was an EV put out by Toyota. It was a RAV, I think it was, and people seemed to like them in California. I knew some people who had some, but then they just, like, forgive the pun, pulled the plug on it, and literally had some that were unsold and just warehoused them. Give us a sense of like where that technology was as a business proposition, and then talk about a little more specifics on that breakthrough that they had in terms of chilling the battery, essentially.
Well, the idea of an electric car goes back to the early days of the auto industry, but the gasoline vehicle won the day. It doesn't mean that automakers weren't trying to bring out electric cars. General Motors was very public with its EV1 in the late 90s, early 2000s. But the problem was the companies envisioned electric cars appealing to somebody who was concerned about the price of gasoline. And so if you're concerned about the price of gasoline, maybe you're not willing to spend a lot of money on a car, and batteries just cost more, especially back then. And so there was this trade-off between performance and things in the car, and essentially what they've come out with is a car that, while it being battery powered, it just wasn't very exciting as a car. Whereas Tesla, the idea, one of the co-founders, Martin Eberhard, his vision, he was a middle-aged guy, between kind of figuring out his career, going through a divorce, what's the best recipe for middle age? Well, a sports car. But he was concerned about the environment, concerned about foreign oil, and so he thought, well, why can't I get an electric sports car that's cool? It looks like a Porsche 911, but has an electric vehicle. Well, he couldn't find one, and that put him on the path to try and think about how to bring that to the market. The idea with Tesla being founded was start at the high end, start with a sports car. The people who buy high-end sports cars can be, they're willing to pay a lot of money, maybe not make a decision based upon practicality. They might be willing to overlook some things, but as long as it was cool and had performance, they thought they could sell. And that was the vision that Martin Eberhard and his colleagues took to Elon Musk when they were looking for funding to get Tesla going. And Elon, he believed in that idea as well. And that's where Tesla began in 2003 and 2004 when Elon came on board as chairman. The idea that they were going to bring out the Roadster that was going to be the perfect car for that person in Silicon Valley who had a Toyota Prius and a BMW 3 Series in their driveway. They were going to buy the Roadster. That was going to show that an electric car could be more than just a golf cart. The big idea that they had was they were going to use lithium-ion batteries, and those are the things you would find at the time in camcorders or laptops. Right? The idea was technology off the shelf that they thought that they could bring the price down if they bought enough of. That was a big difference between the other automakers who were always looking for the perfect technology for zero-emission vehicles.
And I gotta say, like, I remember listening to Rush Limbaugh, mock Priuses, and they go on the highway and they get run off and this and that. And I think like Tesla at that time changed that mentality and made it much harder to sort of knock the idea of a battery powered car. All right, so with that said, isn't it like then we have a series of sort of like promises that come from Tesla that really, it seems to me, were never delivered. Like it seems to me, and you'd have a better sense of this, that Tesla was a company for a certain period of time, and from a societal perspective, and with the help of society, right? I mean, there was a lot of government subsidies involved in this too, right?
Indirectly, yeah, absolutely. The government helps with loans and with credits that help people make it more affordable, and then credits and energy credits out there that other automakers tend to buy from Tesla, which have helped Tesla over the years. So yes, they benefited from governments trying to push people toward electric vehicles.
And then we have like a whole series of promises from the company, and as a lot of those people you write, have basically left the company that were there, were crucial, fired by Musk because he's got some other issues. It feels like they've left, and things like self-driving cars, like that to me seems like we don't seem terribly close to the self-driving car, at least as expressed by Tesla and Elon Musk, at least for it to be safe, right?
Well, that's the challenge of self-driving is that I think you go back 5 years ago and all the experts and engineers working on self-driving thought that they were 99% there and it would just be just a little bit more and they could do it. The problem is that last 99.99, that one, you go down that road and that's the challenge. Being perfect or being close to perfect or being better than humans is very difficult. But you're hitting on this thing that's very important in the history of Tesla and why it's been able to do what it's been able to do. And Elon has been able to sell customers and, more importantly, investors on the idea of what the future of cars are. First, it was electric, and then as time went on, and as the state-of-the-art grew, then it was fully self-driving. And the challenge for Tesla has been that at a certain point, the Tesla was able to kind of achieve many of the things he was selling. But in 2016, there was really what people describe internally as a culture change, where Elon was making comments and claims about the abilities that we haven't seen and going further than some people were comfortable with. And that was his claims about self-driving technology. What they have is autopilot. Autopilot is a driver assistance feature. Think of it as like a super cruise control. It is not able to, you are not able to get in the car and take a nap and let the car drive you home. And some people think the car can do more than what it can really do. That has raised concerns among safety advocates and experts that Tesla is pushing it a little too far.
How much of this is just this dynamic of being a public company and wanting to have the flashiest perception of being technologically advanced? I did an interview recently about how completely far we are away from lab-created meat. I mean, it's not in the realm of possibility right now, but it's attracted a lot of VC money, and of course, this is a much larger operation. Tesla has ballooned, but a lot of these projects, seemingly maybe more in recent years, in this post-2016 era you described, seem to be more designed to make splashes and thus kind of get investors interested than it is connected to the reality.
I mean, clearly Tesla has benefited from Elon's ability to sell that future you're talking about. It is a stock, it is a growth stock. The challenge that creates is it has to be growing, or it has to be reaching towards that future. When you look at the valuation now of the company, the world's most valuable automaker, by a huge amount, and longtime observers and financial experts kind of scratch their head because essentially, at a certain point, the market was saying, well, yes, Tesla was correct. The future of cars is electric, but then at a certain point, the valuation would suggest that not only is the future electric, but Tesla is going to be basically the only automaker, and it's not going to be the case. And so then you have to tear it apart, some of those numbers, and clearly betting that Tesla's going to win on self-driving. It's going to be more than just a car company, that there's going to be the energy component, that it's going to have robot taxis and these things. And that's the challenge that Tesla has. It's rooted in the fact that it costs billions of dollars to run a car company. That's the challenge of being a startup in the car industry, is that you need just tons of cash, because bending metal just eats cash. And that's the challenge they had at the beginning, was to sell that future. And now we're at a point with the company that, well, they're selling this huge future, and it's a race to kind of catch up to get the technology to that point.
I mean, it seems to me, because we have, he's, Elon Musk, and I don't know if it's Tesla necessarily, although to a certain extent, some of it is, they're branching out ostensibly as if this technology, they can apply it in other areas, right? Like we have the tunnel in Las Vegas that is really just, it's basically a small bus underground that goes to one stop. In fact, down the road here in Brooklyn, you can go to the secret
train.
There's a secret train here that was developed 100 years ago. No, I'm not joking. 100 years ago, somebody had the same exact idea. It wasn't probably as sleek looking. And also, I'm also thinking about the solar tiles. I signed up to get on the list for the solar tiles, 2 years ago or something. It cost me $100, and I was like, I'm wanting to make a flyer on this. And I 2 years later realized I got sort of scammed. I put myself $100. Like, how many people did that? I would imagine quite a few. Isn't there it seems to me, if I had a lot of stock in Tesla right now, I'd be a little bit nervous, because the race is between them developing this technology about self-driving cars, right, which is going to be one thing that makes them stand out, and the ability of these other automakers who are all now starting to catch up on the core, business proposition, which is electric cars are viable. And once that happens, there's no sort of real added value to Tesla unless you really like the look of their car.
Well, you hit on that nail on the head there. That's the challenge for Tesla, in the next generation here is going to be execution. They had this head start with electrification, but as GM and Volkswagen and others race to get into those lanes, they're going to start to face real challenges on the street. And for years, that you have raised kind of this issue for years that people have talked about, that the challenge for Tesla would be is as soon as GM would bring out an electric car, then Tesla's days run, or as soon as a BMW or Mercedes, whatever. Well, so far we haven't seen. There have been attempts, but they've been kind of duds. And so that gives Tesla investors and Tesla fans kind of confidence. But the challenge of the auto industry is brutally competitive. Just because the Bolt is done doesn't mean that the next generation isn't going to be there. GM is clearly learning. They're clearly investing billions of dollars to catch up. And so instead of there being the Tesla pillar that everybody's looking for, the real potential challenge for Tesla is going to be what I call the Tesla nibblers. These competitors that nibble away at their sales at all the different price points, from the luxury to the lower end, and just every day is going to be a knife fight in that EV space, and that's going to be a huge challenge for Tesla. So putting pressure on these things that you talk about, developing self-driving technology, that's kind of the future they are selling now.
Well, they're selling a future, it seems to me, in order to fund a quite pricey operation. And forgive me if I'm too cynical here, Tim, but selling a future to attract investors and then not developing the technology that you say that you're close to developing is a scam. Is a scam, is it not?
A lot of people want to always ask me, what's the difference between Theranos and Tesla? Well,
right.
The big difference is that you can go buy the Model 3. I have written the Model 3. The Model 3 is helping generate record profits for the company. And just this previous quarter, more than $1 billion in profit. And not just because of those energy credits we talked about, not just because of government help, right? They have finally figured out how to make money off of these cars, which is a huge breakthrough, right? So on one hand, you're right. They are selling technology that they haven't yet developed, and that can be questionable and troubling and risky. But on the other hand, they do have some products. They do have a fleet of cars that they are building and putting into people's hands. And so what you have with Tesla is kind of a mixed match of things. You've got a traditional car company, but you also have which you would in some ways consider a startup almost. Companies that are selling what they hope to be doing. And that is what's different about Tesla. You've got that kind of startup mentality there, which could go bad. Tesla is definitely a risk, right? They have risk.
When do you stop being a startup? When do you when your valuation hits wherever they're at, when you're publicly traded, when you've been on the market for years and years, when do you move past the startup mentality and that kind of self-identification?
It's a good question. I kind of think of them as teenagers. It's a teenage company. They haven't quite become adult, but they're clearly still learning some of those kind of corporate lessons that you need to be if you're going to span generations. But one of the benefits they have is they do have that entrepreneurial kind of in the trenches mentality that they're going to try to eke it out every quarter, and and help them so far.
Well, I mean, I have a teenager, and I can tell you they don't always tell the truth. But it seems to me that in 2016, Musk had this sort of realization that he was in a race, that the distinguishing factor of Tesla didn't exist, and the race became, do we get to actual self-driving cars before all these other major car companies get to some iteration of what we have now in the Tesla? And that to me is a tough race to run. But what does it say about the fact that that's the battle, right? I mean, if in a year or two, GM or BMW or whoever it is comes out with a car that is almost as good as a Tesla, let's say, in all the different sort of categories one would assess a car like that. It seems to me it's Johnny Ballgame, right? At that point, it's over. And what does that say about a a business sector where a company that is in such a precarious race has that type of market value?
Well, the thing about the auto industry is really competitive, right? This has been going on for 100 years. It's a constant race to have the next hot thing, to put the metal on the street that people are going to buy. You're hitting on, what the thing that keeps executives awake at night in Detroit and Stuttgart and Toyota City. I mean, this is the grist of the auto industry game. And Tesla, what's remarkable at Tesla, the big thing about Tesla is that they have got themselves in that race. Really the first company to emerge since the days of Henry Ford to be head-to-head competing against the likes of Chevrolet and Ford and Chrysler. That's the remarkable thing. Now the challenge is you're hitting it. I mean, you're straight on. I mean, that doesn't mean just because they got the race doesn't mean they can finish the race, that they're going to be able to compete long term. But right now they have created a situation to that valuation of that stock and being able to raise money very cheaply, essentially not dilute the stock. They've got a war chest that will help them into the near future in a way that is really remarkable.
But I'm asking you as a business reporter. I mean, as someone who sort of like what does it say that there's that much money out there who are willing to bet on this type of long shot, right? I mean, that's a lot of money. It seems to me that is bet on what is like a super long shot. I mean, I had an uncle who had a car dealership, and so I remember the DeLorean.
Oh yeah.
And so, cool car, super cool car, and I think Tesla needs the credit where credit's due. I do think that they helped push the battery technology and made it sort of like widespread acceptance of electric cars. But taking this next step where you don't have a driver, that's a much bigger leap, it seems to me. Fundamental change. What does it say about all this money that's sloshing around out there that is betting on this horse?
I mean, it's not just self-driving, but Elon is projecting 20 million annual sales, which is huge. I mean, that's huge. And the idea, that's why the subtitle of the book is the bet of the century. To pull off all these things to back up that valuation ultimately, I mean, that is going to be very hard, and which underscores that there's a lot of risk here. And that risk is this kind of the thing that Elon just kind of gravitates towards. He's got a risk tolerance that you don't see in modern executives. And in large part because if you want a lifelong career in a place like General Motors or Toyota, that's not the way you rise the corporate ranks. And that gets back to the kind of conversation about when you move beyond the startup kind of phase. Well, it's that entrepreneurial kind of bent that he sees the world differently than these other corporations, right? So that's the challenge with Tesla. If you were an investor in Tesla, you've got to believe in kind of that bet. And there are a lot of people who don't, and they tear that company apart, and they're not raising. Oftentimes, they're not raising incorrect things when they say these are the criticisms. Yes, these are the challenges for the company ahead. So far, they've been able to navigate them. Will they be able to navigate all of them in the future? That's why it's risky.
Well, that's the sequel, I guess. Tim Higgins, reporter, Wall Street Journal, and CNBC contributor. The book is Power Play: Tesla, Elon Musk, and the Bet of the Century. Thanks so much for coming on and talking to us about it. We'll put a link to that at majority.fm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, folks, going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. And just want to touch on that unemployment cliff. We'll be right back after this. I short that company? Would someone please explain me how I short that company?
Tesla?
Yeah.
I mean, just do it.
Well, I mean, I'm not even sure I know how to do that. But if there is I mean, I know what it is. I know
You
what
just
short.
set up an E-Trade account, do it.
But the idea, I mean, look, I had $100 to bet on like this, like maybe I'll be able to get this like shingle solar technology. But the billions of dollars that have been sort of shoveled onto this, like sort of, to me, it's indicative. I mean, aside from the fact that I think, in many respects, Elon Musk is like a,
A lunatic?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't have a problem with lunatics per se, but a bit of a snake oil salesman who I think landed on something, if you're in the snake oil business long enough, you're going to find a product that actually works.
Yeah, if you get a big nest egg from like eBay, which PayPal, sorry, and you can throw it around, and occasionally like some things are going to hit over like the amount of misses he's had, whether it's like underground tunnel stuff or the self-driving stuff. Like
I think that's all like sort of like just like a little bit of a distraction to sort of buy some time.
it's content, yeah.
And the idea that like now I think it's just sort of like there's a lot of like dancing going on, and the music I think is about to run. Let's put it that way. And I think a lot of like there is I think it's indicative of sort of wealth inequality, frankly, that there's so much money sloshing around to bet this heavily on a company that is like, yeah, I think it did help, but it's not going to get to where it's going to on some level.
I mean, what do you mean by it did help? It created a upper class.
But yeah,
Well, but it created more of a market and an acceptance of electric vehicles.
Okay, right.
I gotta continue this, but probably say.
All right. Well, I think we're winding up this, but I want to talk also about the unemployment stuff, Social Security, as well. But we will get to that in the fun half, which is coming up in just a moment, and we'll feature Atlet, the critique of the idea that Tesla was even
Whether we should even applaud that.
applaud.
Well, I tried to go, is this just a scam? Then I don't know if that was like the right
No, even if the cars are successful,
Yeah.
And that's even if. But with that said, if you're watching us on Peacock, bye-bye, see you tomorrow. And if you're not, then hello. Let's put on some.
So there's a George Orwell quote about H.G. Wells who wrote War of the Worlds that I always really like. And it says, a decade or so before airplanes were technically feasible, Wells knew that within a while men would be able to fly. He knew that because he himself wanted to be able to fly, and therefore felt sure that research in that direction would continue. And that's fine, but the rest of the essay goes on to say about how H.G. Wells was completely clueless about policy, for instance, the rise of Hitler. And it's this, what class of people is making these decisions? Like in terms of the things as big as the future, it's investors now that want to lock in automobiles. And we're in the middle of talking about a $2.5 trillion infrastructure package. And a lot of it's about roads, and are we going to have like highways and stuff like that? And it's like, if we didn't have a guy like Elon Musk who's antithetical to public transportation, it's basically like Robert Moses lived with a car broker.
Oh, wow, yeah.
What Robert Moses did to New York by just putting freeways through everything, I think that's what we're like teeing up for now by basically having this environmental standard somehow with the cars.
Well, I think, look, you have to ask the question, in the absence of electric vehicle technology that's sped up, I think, like, if you accept the premise that Tesla sped up the adoption of the battery-operated car, right, which I do, okay, because of, in the odds? Like in 2000, like the idea of electric vehicles were just mocked mercilessly, and you still have large swaths of the country where it's like to roll coal with your freaking pickup is like that's the most American thing you can do is chuck that catalytic converter, blow that ash out your tailpipe. I mean, so if you accept that premise, and I think the bottom line is it's a bridge technology on some respects, right? Like we should have far more sophisticated public transportation in this country, and ultimately may run on similar type of technology. And his dumb idea of like that tunnel, I swear to God, there's something called, if you go down to the Transportation Museum right down the street here, you could go downstairs and see the secret train that some dude had made, which it just goes.
But is it lit up in a cool, futuristic, neon lighty way?
Fair enough, but I feel like, okay, it's a great topic to write a book about in terms of Tesla, but it is over. Like it served its function, and now he's just sort of like.
I thought it was going to be more just a conversation about it being a grift, because you can have an idea that hits gold. You can get lucky. I don't find his marketing to be genius in any particular way. You can get lucky, and then you've got to keep that up.
All those engineers who developed that technology, they're gone.
Oh, they're gone. They left. And the people that still work there, he forced them into unsafe conditions during COVID, and More Perfect Union just interviewed a black employee or ex-employee from Tesla, who basically is alleging that, amongst a variety of other, I think, plaintiffs, that he was retaliated against for reporting to HR that he was called a racial slur, and another one of his black employees was a chair was thrown at him. So like this is not a new kind of company. This is the same kind of.
Well, I mean, to be fair, though, that racist environment doesn't have those annoying sounds when they one foot backs up or color yellow. Is that nice?
A lot smoother, right? Because it's in the vision of a megalomaniac, it can't be like one of those boring companies like Toyota.
Ray says, Sam, you should interview Ed Niedermeyer, who also wrote a book on Tesla on the futility of people trying to short Tesla stock for the last decade. That's the problem, is that like there's so much money in the hands of so few people that they can afford to have it be really stupid.
They can prop it up like for how it's like the United States with the Afghanistan government. We can afford, or we choose to make the investment on a regular basis to prop up this sham. It's like you never know when the eventual.
All right, we're gonna take a but I'm like, is that a scam call? Should I take it? Hold on 1 second. Shoot, I think it was. All right, we're gonna take a quick break. Headed to the fun half. Number 646-257-3920. We'll talk about the Social Security stuff that's happening right now. You've seen the stories. Listen to the radio in the morning to find out what the AP is pumping out. They're pumping out like all of a sudden there's one, and it's because of
How dare you besmirch Alex Perrine's new Substack like that?
Oh yeah, sorry. And there's New York Times came out with their tweet. Social Security's going to be insolvent. I got news for you folks. Social Security is not going to be insolvent. The trust fund may run out of funds if nobody does anything, but I've got some other bad news for you if you believe that. All of the government functions that we rely on are going to run out of money if nobody decides to do anything over the next 10 years. If they don't pass a debt ceiling hike, if they don't pass a budget appropriation, there'll be nothing. And that's also not going to happen. So, but I should have said spoiler alert. But tune into the fun half for more about that. Don't forget, it is your support that makes this show survive and thrive. You can become a member at jointhemajority.report.com. Only you can make sure that happens. Don't forget also, you can check out our Discord at Majority Discord. You can get our email newsletter, the AM Quickie, at majority.fm. Scroll all the way down, put your email in there, check it out. Stick around at the end of the program. I'm going to open up a little drawing that has been sent to us of Michael. I have a vague idea of what it's going to look like, but I've not opened it yet from one of our listeners. And also, of course, on Friday, at one point, we're going to be doing something out downtown. Matt, what's happening in the Matt Leckie universe?
But yeah, tonight, David Grissom and I, I'm not directly talking about the Texas SB bill and the full rate of populace that is passed. I'll also be talking about the history of Blair Mountain a little bit, hopefully a future interview. And we'll have Stella from the UK talking to us about the Labour Party and the increasing agitation for unions over across the pond. So check that out tonight, 8 Eastern, the patreon.com/Black Friday to get the post game where I'll be talking about their Wednesday, what to
I mean, I don't know if I would keep that as tense. I'm still.
You're still considering it?
Still like looking into it too. They're trying to find my files.
I feel like I fired you. Like you have not shown up at work.
I don't want to get for 5 years.
Oh, the Blair Mountain. That was 100 years ago, right? I saw that in the movie.
Oh my god, I remember that.
The Race to Witch Mountain is not yet 100 years old.
That's correct. Folks, also don't forget check out Nomi's show at youtube.com/The Nomi Key Show. You can find that it's also happening tonight. Make sure you check that out. And see you in the one half.
Jimmy,
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an
Things up there,
like he's awesome.
not funny, funny.
I'm sorry, I didn't exactly. Nervous, a little bit upset, riled up. Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defensive line. Which is going to be big. All right. You want to smoke this joint? Yes. Do you feel like you are a dinosaur? Exactly. I'm happy now. It's a win-win-win. Hell yeah. Now listen to me. 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 38, 6, 27. 1 half. 5 eighths. 3.9. Wow. You can go over that third, don't you see? Why don't you get a real John says you can just go and take your everybody's thinking you're dumb. Come on, damn it! Dance. First, let's put this. Well, we got one thing to my repertoire. All I have is squirrel. Fine. Yes, this is a perfect. Oh, no. Wait, what? Excuse me. Fuck you. Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person. All right, we're going to take a break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Get whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabs. Classic. Giving lunch, they're all going to be Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses. Hitler was such an idiot. Well, yes. Wow, that's no way. Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like, hey, shut up. Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. That will be with you shortly. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. I want to, you gotta be kidding me. What? Yes, I am. This is just, God,
You've got to do it now.
I know I do. Clitoris. All these riled up anti-maskers and anti-vaccination people remind me of the town hall meetings in the lead up to the ACA, which led to the 2010 Tea Party takeover of Congress. Do you see something similar in this midterm? I'm worried about it, yeah. Without doubt. And then they write, could you say my name again, please?
Don't do that.
I'm not going to. No, I'm not going to. But yes, I am worried about it.
We have a question about where to find that live grown meat interview on Peacock. I don't know.
Go to Peacock. Search reported Sanseer, then scroll through the
All you need to do is report it. That's the name of the show.
reported and scroll through and see if you can find it.
Yeah, it may be expired by now. So no meat pun included.
Well, yeah, it depends on what color the background is, whether they keep it up. So. Yeah. Hey, Sarah Ron Johnson, this brainiac, he is a breaking story. It's an exclusive that is on. Where was it on? It was at a Republican fundraising event in Wattawatta, Wisconsin, on Sunday. Good job. Probably did not pronounce that correctly, but I'm not going to. And this is breaking news about why Donald Trump lost in Wisconsin.
You know that I did win this election. I mean, in my heart of hearts, I can see it. He didn't win. Do you think that Joe Biden was
I should tell you,
The source of this is one very esteemed Project Veritas. Oh, it's not?
no.
Oh, darn.
Journalists are exposing Project Veritas.
I'm so sorry. I thought that it was potentially then.
And so somebody asks him, he speaks to somebody, and was the person recording this? Oh, who was the person recording it?
I thought it was Project
Oh,
Veritas, and then it was the.
Okay, so she's asking him essentially to concede that he believes that. So here's the interesting part. He's getting stung on some level. He doesn't necessarily realize that he's being recorded because he's been out there pretending like the election's been stolen. But when he's having to talk to someone right up in front of his face, he's actually so he's, on one hand he plays like a national media, on the other he realizes like people in Wisconsin can't lie to him. That's what's going on. So
The Crenshaw video.
exactly, that's what's going down.
And also, if you're in a one-on-one conversation with someone, it's a lot harder to maintain this like acting posture.
Exactly.
You know that I did win this election. I mean, in my heart of hearts, I can see it. He didn't win. Do you think that Joe Biden was I know. Well, I mean, I know that there was a late night death in Milwaukee or something. I don't remember exactly what number. you're telling me that Joe Biden won the state.
Also, I got this moment is he sort of whispers that part.
Yeah.
He goes like, he sort of gives like a little furtive glance, like, oh, I'm gonna lay some truth on you. You got less votes than the other guy. All right, so go back and play this. It's fascinating that Ron Johnson is this sort of like, and I wonder why he decides to tell her the truth. And nobody else.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you a secret. All right. Again, that was I like that little further.
Obviously, and just so obviously,
You're telling me that Joe Biden won the state. I don't see it. I don't believe it. Nothing to you about results.
I'm not saying what's happening there, but